بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So today is the last session before we start the Ramadan prep next weekend. So next weekend and the weekend after will be all the sessions will be Ramadan preparation, Saturday and Sunday, and Friday as well. Friday will be in Arabic, obviously, because everything is in Arabic on Friday nights, and then Saturday and Sunday will be in English. The first week or next week will be fiqh kind of oriented. We'll be talking about rulings and ways to kind of adapt to the change in the month's habits. And you just turn it off. Yeah. And then the week after will be a little bit more talk on spiritual aspects and spiritual needs. So we finished, subhanAllah, we concluded Surat Al-Haqqa last week, and we're going to start Surat Al-Ma'arij today. We will probably not do, this halaqah won't come back in its current form, which is tafsir, until maybe mid-April, because once we do Ramadan prep, and then there's full month of April, March, which is Ramadan, and then we take usually 2 weeks afterwards. So the next session after today will be sometime mid-April or third week of April, inshallah ta'ala. And nonetheless, it's worth initiating the tafsir of a new surah to allow people maybe to reflect on it and reflect on the meanings that it carries, maybe throughout the month of Ramadan as well. All right, so Surat Al-Ma'arij, which is the fourth surah in this cluster from Al-Mulk to Al-Mursalat. And this juz' is a juz' that is a Mekki juz'. Everything in it was revealed in Mecca, and there's not one surah in this, or one ayah for that matter, within this juz' that is revealed in Medina. All are Mekki. And the first four surahs talk about the requirements. What are the four personal requirements? You have to have a certain amount of knowledge. You have to have a certain ethical standard. You have to have a certain amount of spirituality or emotional. Is it still not on? Okay. Emotional reflection, which is what Surat Al-Haqqa is. And then the fourth one, you have to have a certain amount of behaviors or suluk, practices. So these are the four basic domains. So Surat Al-Mulk talked about the requirements in terms of ilm, knowledge, what we need to know. Surat Al-Qalam talked about the requirements in terms of ethical standards. And Surat Al-Haqqa talked about the emotional reflection piece, which is wa'adh or ruhaniyya, the aspect of spirituality. And then Surat Al-Ma'arij talked about suluk, any behaviors, practices, actions, like what is it you're supposed to be doing? What does this all turn into in terms of behaviors and actions? And then the surah, you're like, well, that's all you need. Why is there? What is the rest of the juz' going to talk about? The rest of the juz' is going to give examples of da'wah. Like, in order for you to perform da'wah, in order for you to be an ambassador of Islam, you need these four domains. You have to have a certain amount of knowledge, ethical standard, emotional reflection, and behaviors. Once you do, then you start being an ambassador of your deen. Whether you do this verbally or you do this practically, pragmatically, it doesn't make a difference. But then we have examples. So Surat Nuh is going to be an example of da'wah that was done perfectly but still did not have an outcome. And Surat Al-Jinn is an example of where da'wah was not even done intentionally and had a good outcome. And then Surat Al-Muzammil, Al-Muddathir talks about how to protect yourself as you go through this. And then Surah Al-Qiyamah, Al-Mursalat are examples of da'wah, like examples of how to do it. One that is intellectually driven, one that is fear driven, and one that is desire driven. And that's basically this juz'. It's very simple juz', honestly. Every surah is very well described and just talks about something very specific. Surah Al-Ma'arij is a very beautiful one. Actually, every surah in this juz' is absolutely amazing in terms of what they talk about, but it's going to teach us certain things about practices, and you're going to see it almost immediately or just after the introduction of the surah is done, once we start going through the verses that start describing people. But it's really interesting to read the first part of the surah, the introductory piece, and what it's talking about and kind of what it brings forward in terms of conceptualizations. So let's begin, inshallah, with the surah. And as I pointed out, all of these surahs are early Mekki. And they're not late Mekki, they're all early in the Meccan period of the Prophet ﷺ, like, meaning these are all early surahs that the Sahaba heard, all of them, and not just this Juz' Tabarak, but also Juz' Naba. Is it still making sound up front? Because there's like a mute button that you need to, if you need help, I can help you find it. I know where it is if you don't. Okay, just mute it up front so they can do. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سأل سائل بعذاب واقع. للكافرين ليس له دافع. من الله ذي المعارج. تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره. كان مقداره 50,000 سنة. فاصبر صبرا جميلا. إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا. يوم تكون السماء كالمهل. وتكون الجبال كالعهن. ولا يسأل حميم حميما. So the surah begins with سأل سائل. A sa'il is someone who has a question. And this is a phrase, a figure of speech or a phrase in the Quran that is just pointing out the fact that it's not about who did this or why they did this. It's just saying that a person with a question asked بِعَذَابٍ وَاقِعٍ about a punishment that is going to occur at some point in the future. And this is referring to the Day of Judgment in Yawm al-Qiyamah. So سَأَلَ سَائِلٌ. Someone asked about this. Someone who had a question asked this question at some point. It's just a way of getting people's interest into the topic. لِلْكَافِرِينَ لَيْسَ لَهُ دَافِعٍ. As for the disbelievers, as for the kafirin, لَيْسَ لَهُ دَافِعٍ. There is no repellent for it. There's nothing to push back against it. The dafa' is to push back against something. So لِلْكَافِرِينَ لَيْسَ لَهُ دَافِعٍ, meaning as far as the disbelievers are concerned, there's nothing that will push back against it for them, or that can protect them from it. مِنَ اللَّهِ ذِي الْمَعَارِجِ. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one with the many ways of ascendance. So al-ma'raj or al-ma'rij is a way of ascension, when you're ascending upwards. Al-uruj is to ascend. Al-ma'rij is a way, a path of ascension, right? Al-ma'arij are the paths of ascension. So min Allahi dhil ma'arij, meaning this adhab and waqi', this punishment that is going to occur, that as far as the kafirin are concerned, or the disbelievers, there's nothing to protect them from it. There's nothing to push back against it for them. It is coming and originating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one with the many paths of ascension to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is pointing out something. Of course, the surah is named Al-Ma'arij. It's named after this one word. And the word Araja, you find it in the Quran many times. And in essence, Araj is when someone walks with a limp. A'raj, ليس ولا على الأعرج حرج. So an a'raj is someone who is disabled in one of their lower extremities, and they're limping. I mean, they don't walk, and they can't walk a straight line. So there's a little bit of a curve to how it's being moved. So I mean, al-ma'arij, they're called ma'arij because when they go upwards, they don't go in a straight line. There's a curve to them because everything is curved in the universe. The people knew, looking up, the sky is not a straight, it's not a rectangle, right? There's a curvature to it. There's a curvature to the earth and a curvature to how we see the cosmos. And of course now, these things are scientific maxims, and they're given. Aside from the flat earthers who seem to have found their voice on social media these days, this is something that a grade 3-year-old will learn, that everything is they're just flaming balls that are all within the universe, and we're sitting on one that's not flaming, which is why we're alive. But everything is a ma'arij. So a ma'arij is going something that's not moving in a straight line but moving up. And al-ma'arij are ways, are paths of ascension. And the concept here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are different ways to ascend to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just one way to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's different ways to arrive at His rida subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually this is a concept of Tafseer. We're not talking about theology here. We're not talking about Tawheed, the knowledge piece, because that's been talked about in Surat al-Mulk, and there's certain things that we all have to agree to in order for you to find God. But after you are able to accept the basics of theology, of belief system, of Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the prophecies of the prophets, alayhimus salatu wassalam ajma'in, after that, there are different ways for you to ascend to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to find your way to Him. As long as your sirat is mustaqim, as long as you're walking a path that is flawless or that is incorruptible, then there are different ways to make it. Different people will find different things that they are attracted to. Some will find it through salah, and some will find it through Quran, and some will find it through dhikr, and some will find it through physical jihad, and some will find it through financial jihad, and some will find it through. So there are certain basics that we all have in common, but then there are many different ways that you ascend to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He's Dil Ma'arij. He's the one who has many paths of ascension that are leading to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that piece is important. He uses this term here, subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's very much connected to what he's trying to explain to us. Because when you go through the surah, you're going to find all these descriptions. You're going to find negative descriptions at the beginning, which is what the beginning starts with. It starts with some negative descriptions. It starts with certain human certain aspects of human nature that need to be dealt with or refined. But then it starts describing صلاتهم دائمون في أموالهم حق معلوم, all these different behaviors, right? And everyone will find themselves a little bit more committed to one of them over the other, and that's fine. It's a part of being human. Not everyone, we're not all exactly the same. We're not all attracted to the exact same amount or the exact same type of acts of worship or acts of goodness, which is really why in Islam, as long as you have the basics, if you just find a niche, just something good, something that you can contribute through, then you'll be fine Yawm al-Qiyamah. Not everyone has to contribute through knowledge. Not everyone has to contribute through wealth. Not everyone's going to carry a sword or a rifle and go fight for something. Not everyone has the opportunity to do these things, but you'll find something that you can do. There's something and all of these are ways of ascension to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the concept of why he's using this term. تَعْرُجُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحُ إِلَيْهِ. All of the malaika and the Holy Spirit. The ruh is the Holy Spirit. You could also understand it as the ruh in general, as in the spirit, the collective spirit of humanity, as in all of the spirits individually coming together collectively. The Arabic language and the linguistics allow for that understanding to be correct as well. They all ascend to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. في يوم, in a day, كان مقداره, that is estimated to be 50,000 سنة, that is estimated to be 50,000 years long. Talking about the Day of Judgment. He is here, subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about the end of it all. So everyone's ascending to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one way or the other. And the day will come where all the malaika and the spirits, meaning that's how I understand it. I don't look at this specifically as Jibreel or the Ruh al-Qudus, but rather as the Ruh, as the spirits that He put in the bodies of all of us collectively. We all ascend to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala on a specific day. That day is estimated to be 50,000 years long. 50,000 سنة, which is talking about Yawm al-Qiyamah, when all of this is brought together, when the end occurs. The end that was talked about at the beginning of the surah, when someone who had a question asked. سأل سائل. Someone asked, well, what about this عذاب واقع? Huh? What's going to occur? Well, that is going to occur on a day where the one who has all these paths to ascend to him, all these paths of ascension, everything that he created, the malaika and the ruh will all ascend to him on this day. And that will be estimated to be 50,000 years long. So right away, and this is a good way for you to differentiate between how surahs work. So if you go back to Surah Al-Haqqa that we recited last time, and you read the first maybe to 35 or even more. If you read all the Surah Al-Haqqa almost to the end, looking for a command, looking for something to be told to do, you're not going to find it, because Surah Al-Haqqa is about emotional or spiritual reflection. It's about ta'ammul and tadabbur. That is wa'zi in nature. So you just don't find it. And these little details matter. Like when we're explaining the Quran, these details are important for you to pay attention to. That this surah, you recited the whole thing, and there was not one command. You were not told to do anything. Right? You're just being reminded of things. But at Surah Al-Ma'arij, 4 verses in, the 5th verse, فَاصْبِرْ, you're given a command. فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا. And this is a very important command. The Prophet ﷺ tells us, when he talks about iman, that the sabru shatrul iman, that sabr is a half of what iman is. And the scholars traditionally have looked at this phrase and other phrases that he has given, ﷺ, and said that in terms of behaviors, in terms of actions, in terms of what you're doing, iman is 2 things only. There's only the manifestation of your belief, the manifestation of your tadayyun, of your religiosity, of your acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, presents itself in only 2 forms. There's no third form. It's 2 forms. Either you're in a state of perseverance because there's difficulty, or you're in a state of gratitude because there's ease. That's it. There's no third state. There's no such thing as neutrality. Either you're doing well, on whatever level, so you're grateful for that and you're using that for khair, or you're doing unwell, you're very unwell, you're sick, you're tired, you're poor, you're struggling, you're having, so you show a certain degree of perseverance. But there's no third option here, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this command, fasbir, because that's half of it. Half of it in terms of your behaviors. And iman is also, like Islam is also, as a faith, it's divided into other things on a spiritual level or other things on a theological level. But on a practical level, in terms of just behaviors, it's either you're performing shukr or you're performing sabr. And you have to figure out what you're performing based on where you are, like based on what's happening to you in your life and whether things are easy or whether they are difficult. And the more you reflect on your life, you'll find that the more you have reasons to be grateful. Like you'll find that there's more reasons to be grateful than anything else, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here reminds you of the sabr piece. Because the gratitude piece, you're usually doing well anyways. You'll figure that out. But the sabr piece is where it's hard. Right? So, and fasbir, the Prophet ﷺ, this is his command to him. He's being told to do this, ﷺ. And of course, we are being told to do by proxy. We're supposed to do it as well. And he's talking, subhanahu wa ta'ala, here about Yawm al-Qiyamah. But he's also talking about, in general, before you even make it to Yawm al-Qiyamah, which is why he used the phrase, فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا. Show perseverance, but not any type of perseverance. Show beautified perseverance. And we're going to talk about this again in Surah Al-Muzammil when he says, وَهَجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. And if you go through the Quran, you're going to find that there's the word jameel, the word beautiful or beautified is attached or adjacent as describing a number of behaviors that we are required to do. That has to be done, it's going to be done, has to be done in jamal, it has to be done in a way of beauty. So sabr has to be practiced with beauty. You have to practice it with beauty. فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا. And this is what Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam would say once he lost فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. When he was told your son was eaten by a wolf, he knows they're lying. You always know when your kids are lying. It's not hard. And sometimes you just don't have the fight of exposing their lies is just too difficult. It's too much of a uphill fight, so you just give up on it. Most of the time, if you lied to your dad and you think you got by him, you didn't. He knew you were lying. He just was too tired and had no energy to argue with you, so he just let the lie go because he didn't have the energy to do it. It's just too tiring, and you had your you had your web of lies ready. Like you were going to ping pong him around for a while until he was able to corner you. By the time he cornered you, he was too tired or he's willing to kill you. So he might as well just let you go. So when it comes to this, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, he said, alayhi salam. And what's the difference? Because you can be perseverant, but upset. You can be perseverant, but disgruntled. And you're perseverant, but you're not happy. You're not satisfied. You're not in acceptance. There's no rida. There's no rida. Right? Sabran jamila means that you're perseverant, you're persevering in the face of this difficulty that has been handed to you, or this challenge that you're dealing with, but it's a perseverance that is filled with satisfaction. And you are accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and decree. And you're not objecting to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not filled with anger. You're not filled with disappointment. You're not filled with doubt or questioning that which He gave you subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're accepting of it. And that's sabr jameel. So if you're going to do sabr, you have to do it right. But if you're patient and you're holding down, you're being perseverant, and you're holding your own, but deep down inside you're hateful towards everything and everyone, and maybe even towards the Almighty Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's a problem. And that means this sabr is not the correct type of sabr. So here in the first command that we find in Surat Al-Ma'arij is a command of perseverance in terms of behaviors, in terms of actions, in terms of choices of practices. May the first practice that this surah points out to us is sabr. Sabr as an attitude, not just as a one-time thing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Exclusively, the sabirun, the perseverant, will be granted their reward Yawm al-Qiyamah with no form of accountability. Like they're not going to be judged at all. There's no judgment. Forget about punishment. There's no judgment to begin with for there to be punishment. Only the sabirun are offered this status in the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ obviously echoes that in his traditions, and many of them. Why is that the case? Because really, that's where your deen is most vulnerable. It's that moments where you need to show sabr. That's the most difficult. When it's smooth sailing or cruise control, it's not as impressive because things are going well and you're fine. So and you don't need to. There's no challenges there in your life to go after your faith or go after your level of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when life goes sideways, when things aren't functioning as well and you're not doing well, this is where you're vulnerable on a spiritual level, on a faith front. Which is why if you don't have sabr, and if sabr is not an attitude for you, where you're willing to hold on despite difficulty, you're willing to hold on despite this being very. Sometimes we imagine sabr and we imagine someone just sitting there, that's not really sabr. I want you to imagine someone going up a mountain during a storm. That's sabr. Sabr is when you're going up a mountain and it's rocky and it's windy and it's raining, and that's sabr. Sitting and not losing your temper, that's hilm. When we say patience, that's hilm. Well, hilm is beautiful. One of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is Halim subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Abdul Halim. You don't have Abdul Sabur, even though sometimes we use that. I strongly contest it because linguistically the word sabr should not be used to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabr means that there's a difficulty. Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have difficulties? Does He run into difficulties? Does He have to show? No. He is Halim. Halim is where someone tried to anger you and you didn't get angered. You didn't respond with anger. Al-hilm wal-ana, as the Prophet ﷺ would teach us, that إِنَّمَا الْحِلْمُ بِالتَّحَلُّمْ. And he told one of the Sahaba, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted you, إِنَّ فِيكَ خِصْلَتَيْنِ يُحِبُّهُمَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ فَقَالَ أَهُمَا مِنِّي مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّي فَقَالَ بَلْ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ فَقَالَ مَا هُمَا فَقَالَ الْحِلْمُ وَالْأَنَا. You take things slowly and you're patient. You don't lose your temper quickly. Al-sabr, perseverance, is different. Perseverance is where you hold on despite difficulties. Difficulties are coming your way and you're not giving up. You're not quitting. So فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا, meaning you show perseverance and you refuse to quit and you hold on to that which you know is correct even though it's difficult. And you do it in a beautified manner. Jamila, it's beautiful. Meaning your heart is filled with that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not an objection to Him. You're not refusing what He has decreed for you. You may not like the hand, but you have to have rida for it. You have to have satisfaction and acceptance. disgruntlement in Islam is a big problem. If you come to a point where you're معترض على الله, objection, people do it. I've seen it in my lifetime, and it's not that hard for someone to come to a point where they feel that they may do it themselves. And sabran jamila is where your sabr is far away from that. Your sabr is far away from being at the edge, where you're just about one more difficulty and you're going to lose your iman altogether and denounce God from the source. Sabran jamila means that you're far away from that. The more difficulties you are given, the more sabr you are going to show. Because your understanding of life, your understanding of existence is that it's going to be difficult, that there's going to be fitna, you're going to be tested, you're going to be put to the test, you're going to be trialed. You accepted that as your as the story that you're going to live. حَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. You think that's not possible, it's not going to be the case. يقول عليه الصلاة والسلام أشد الناس ابتلاء الأنبياء ثم الصالحون ثم الأمثل فالأمثل. The people who are tested the most in life are the prophets, and then the pious, and then those who are highly ranked. The higher you're ranked, the more you're going to be tested, because these people have more ability to show sabr, because it's an attitude that they carry. So that's the first command that we find in the surah, right at ayah number 5. فَاصْبِرْ صَبْرًا جَمِيلًا. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. Indeed, the disbelievers that يوم القيامة, that adhab waqi', a realistic punishment is coming their way that nothing will push against for them. From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They see it, they see the day of judgment to be far away. Ba'ida. And this is the lie your nafs tells you. The nafs is very, very skilled at constructing narratives that work within its best interest. And what it needs you to know, or what it needs to convince you, is that all of that which you fear in terms of your mortality, in terms of your accountability, that they're far away. They're far into the future. And you have time. You're not in a hurry for any of it. There's nothing to worry about today. There's nothing that you need to stay up thinking about today, and no changes are required today, because this is far into the future. Now, even though the reality is that may be true, maybe you live, inshallah, you live a long life and your mortality is far down, decades away, right? And that accountability of Yawm al-Qiyamah is not going to come soon. Let's say that's the case. رغم أن يوم القيامة لا تأتيكم إلا بغتة. It only comes suddenly. So you don't know. You don't know. Yawm al-Qiyamah can happen anytime. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's choice. We don't get to, this is His, whenever He wants to end this story, He ends it. So even though the likelihood is that you'll live, inshallah, a long life and you'll be, mu'afa, inshallah, and you have time. But the reality of the matter is, whether you're religious or not, makes no difference to what I'm going to say right now, is that you don't know that for sure. You don't have certainty on it. You don't have certainty. When you don't have certainty on something, then you're playing a game of probabilities. And anyone who studied any math at any point in their life knows that the game of probabilities is a very dangerous one when there's a lot at stake. When there's a lot at stake, you have to be very careful with what probabilities you play. People who, gambling is a musibah. It's one of the worst addictions that exist on the planet, and it's one of the worst sins that a person can fall into as a Muslim, because of actually what it does to their mental health and to what it does to their actual wealth. But if they get into the habit of betting everything or putting everything on the line because their probabilities look good for themselves, then these people are destined to lose at some point. They're destined for it not to work out. And these are the people who lose big time and commit suicide, and they ruin everything. And it's interesting that the nafs is actually already doing that with us. We're just not paying attention. Like, you may not be gambling over sports or on horses or whatever else the people gamble on these days, but there's a gamble that we're playing, that the kafirin are playing here, where they're just saying, we have time. Are you sure that you have time? Well, 99% sure, 99 point something percent sure. Like, I'm almost sure that I'll be fine tonight and I won't die tonight. Are you 100%? Is there certainty? Is there a promise for you here? Like, has this been guaranteed for you? No. So, okay, fine. It's a high probability, yeah. Okay, so what are you gambling? Like, what are you putting on the line here? Right? Everything. I am putting everything on the line. As in, literally everything and beyond what I even comprehend to be everything. Because my understanding of everything is very limited. I've only been around for 40 years, not even 40 years. I don't even know like what everything means because it's eternity. I am putting eternity on the line, right? I'm gambling with eternity, saying, no, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I have time. I know it's not guaranteed that I'll be here, but I'm happy with my odds. I'm happy with my odds, so I'm going to play the game of odds. What are you gambling on? Everything. I'm putting everything on the line. My life and the hereafter, like both this life and the one to come. And put it all on the line for this. This is the dumbest gamble ever. It's a horrible bet. Horrible bet. Sit with any poker player and tell them this is what I'm gambling. This is stupid. Never don't do that. If you're going to put something on the line, put maybe a quarter of what you got a couple of times. Make sure to, but put everything and things you don't even own. Things you don't even know about, you're going to put them all on the line, and you don't have guarantee. You're not 100% sure. There's no aql in doing that. You don't do that. And if you do that a lot, you're bound to slip up. Like you're destined to slip up. You're destined because you know why? It's because the probability is going to fool you. Right? But what happens is, if you do it the first time and it works, and the second time and it works, and the third time and then it works, now you're feeling a little bit less tense. You're like, I got this. I got this. 5th time it works, 500th time it works, 1,000th time it works, 2,000 times it works. I'm fine. I'm fine. This is 2,000 times I've gambled everything on this not ending, and it hasn't ended yet, and I haven't lost anything, and that's how you get caught. You know, a lot of the people, you know, I think they've, well, maybe they haven't banned this, made this fully illegal, but what a lot of the casinos and what a lot of these companies that get people addicted to gambling do at the beginning is that they let you win a bit. At the beginning, they make sure you win a couple of times. It's all rigged. They make sure that you win. They give you good odds. 5, 6 times in a row. No problem. You make a nice wad of cash, maybe a couple of $1,000. No problem. They know you'll come back. They'll come back. And you think you're smart, you make another account. They're tracking. They know it's you. They know it's you. You think you're smart, but they know it's you. Right? And then you think, oh, I'll do this again. And then once you're addicted enough, when you start depending on this enough, that's when the actual odds kick in, and that's when you start losing stuff. And that's when you ruin your life. Shaitan does the same thing with the nafs. Same thing. Here, bet everything on the fact that ba'ida, innahum yarawnahu ba'ida is far. Yawm al-qiyamah, accountability and death, they're far. They're not coming anytime soon. Bet on that. You're fine. What are you betting? You're betting this life and the hereafter. You're betting everything. You're betting absolutely everything that tonight you're going to walk out of here safe and sound. You're going to go to sleep and wake up tomorrow morning. That's the bet. This is the gamble. That's why we're not going to change anything tonight, Sheikh. We're going to live exactly the same way. No different intentions, no different behaviors. We're not going to make any adjustments to our lifestyles because my bet is that tonight I'm going to sleep and wake up tomorrow, I'll be fine. You most likely will be correct. But this starts you on a very, very problematic path. Because it's not true, because it's a bet. The problem is because it's a bet. If it was guaranteed, I would have nothing on you. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you a guarantee that you're going to live, I'll tell you, okay, 3 days before that guarantee is overcome, we'll fix you up. I'll run like a boot camp of Qiyam al-Layl for you. You'll fix all your sins. But you don't have that. It's all bets. You're just playing a bet. And this lie that your nafs tells you, that you're fine, that it's far away, is the biggest hoax ever. It's the worst lie that you've accepted. It's only when you stop accepting that lie. Now, the truth is not that you're going to die tonight, because you don't know that either. The truth is that there is a possibility, a real possibility, that I don't live very long. I don't make it tonight. It's there. And because that possibility exists, and because everything is hanging over how things end for me, I have to make changes now. That is the truthful statement. That is a truthful statement. That's not even, you don't need to be religious to make that statement. You could be someone who does not believe in God at all. Like the reality of life is the statement that I gave you. You most likely will live long. You don't know for sure. There is a real possibility that you don't make it very far. and that your time is very limited. There's a possibility, if we talk about numbers, there's a possibility that I don't make it out of here alive tonight. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all long lives with afiyah. But there's a possibility, and because of that, I have to make sure that I'm making the right choices now. Not tomorrow, not the day after, not after I graduate, not once I get married, not when I have my first kid, not when I get a job. No, now, because none of that is guaranteed. None of it, not one of thing. So when he talks to subhanahu wa ta'ala about this, this is why he starts this surah that talks about practicality, that's talking about practices. He starts it by talking about Yawm al-Qiyamah, because your behaviors and your rituals and your practices and the way your choices aren't going to change. They're not going to change if you don't have this piece of the puzzle. Like if this part of the equation is not clear. This is why he started sa'ila sa'ilun. Someone's asking. Someone's asking about this adab waqi' that the disbelievers can't push back on. That comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has an infinite pathways of ascension to him. There's a million ways to make him yarda annak subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a million ways for you to satisfy him and to please him subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just one way. There's a million ways. Yes, of course, there are certain issues that we all agree upon that we have to have, but there's all these different actions that will make him pleased by you, pleased with you subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you're not doing them. Well, the day will come when the malaika and the ruh, all of these spirits will ascend to him on a day that's 50,000 years to be estimated. So be perseverant now. And be perseverant, a beautiful perseverance. One that is filled with rida and filled with acceptance. Because they see this whole story to be far away. وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. And we see it to be very, 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 it's very near, it's very soon. It really is. Ask someone who's 60 or 70 or 80. Are they bored? Are they bored? They feel like, oh, it's taking too long. When is Israel going to come and visit me? يخلصني? No, everyone's like, I was grade 6 yesterday. Everyone's in their mind still, time fools you, big time. Time fools you, it takes us for fools, it really does. You lose half your life and you don't even feel it, you don't even know about it. Why? Because you're just telling yourself, oh, I'm young, I have time. You don't, you really don't. What's 40 years? What's 50 years? What's 100 years? Who cares about 100 years, honestly? If I asked you, when did, if I gave a random name of a scientist or a scholar, you're like, I don't know, 1600s, 1700s. You just murdered a full race of people. You just murdered a full generation of human beings, and you don't even care. If you're right, if you're like somewhere between those numbers, oh, good, see, I'm good. I got it, just 100 years off. 100 years off. So that's all of us. Our lives and our joys and our passion and our sadness and our everything, our ambitions, what we did. But we, even as people, look back and we don't care. 100 years means nothing, because we know it means nothing. We actually know it means nothing. It's not, there's not even, wallah, you don't need, and I say these things not because, and we don't, not because we take our knowledge anywhere else from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you don't need necessarily to have religiosity to know these things. Certain things are just a part of the package of being around and having a little bit of wisdom, just looking around and figuring some stuff out. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tends in the Quran to remind you of stuff that you should know. You should know this. You should know that time is very limited. You should know that no matter how long you live, the moment the end comes, you're going to feel like it wasn't enough. You should know by now that, as long as it ends, that means it's close and it's near. The only thing that is not close and near is when it's endless. That's it. If it's going to end, then it doesn't matter how long it takes. At some point, it's going to end, and it's going to be short in nature. Even punishment. وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. We see it to be very near. يَوْمَ تَكُونُ السَّمَاءُ كَالْمُهْلِ. When the cosmos, they turn into molten brass. They melt. The fabric of the universe starts to melt. You start watching it. You start watching the destruction of everything. You see it be folded. You see it burn. You see it shattered. You see it melting. تكون السماء كالمهل. المهل means a melted type of metal, brass most likely. وتكون الجبال كالعهن. And then all these mountains that you stand and you look at their beauty and their magnificence and how sturdy they are and how almost it's impossible for us to. كالعهن, they turn into wool, into threaded wool. Like wool. So wool you can condense it and make it heavy, but then there's like the threaded out wool where it just flies, and with the cotton that just flies in the air. On a day when the universe will melt and the mountains will turn into threaded wool. وَلَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا. And an intimate friend will not ask about or of his intimate friend. He won't ask him, كيف الحال? How are you? Can I help you? Is there anything I can do for you? No. No one speaks to no one. No one's speaking to anyone. No matter how close they are, no matter how much they just don't. Why? Hamim, that's what it means. Hamim is intimacy. Hamimun is an intimate friend, someone that you shared your life with, someone that you shared your joys and your sorrows, and someone who's very close to you. You see, this is your best friend. This is the person you love the most in your life. And they loved you the same way, and on the day of judgment, وَلَا يَسْأَلُ, and they're not asking each other anything. Why? Because the danger is so imminent, and it's so real that your selfishness, the ultimate form of your selfishness kicks in. You can't fight back at it. The day is so difficult that you can't fight back. Like, we have selfishness, and sometimes we'll push back against it when it presents itself. On that day, you can't. On that day, it's just I have to save myself. This is way too horrific. I don't know what's happening. Your reality is being ripped down. It's being taken away. There's no home anymore to go back to. There's no road to drive back to your safety, to your safe place. There's nothing. Everything is lost. And at that moment, when we feel that degree of isolation, that degree of being truly outcasts, where we have nowhere we don't belong anymore anywhere, you don't have time to ask. You would think that at that point people would come together, but no, you don't, because there's a piece of us, all of us, that knows that today it's not about protecting each other. Today is about making sure that I make it. Today is about judgment. Today is about accountability. Today is about what I've done. And you're ashamed of certain things, embarrassed of other things, looking forward to some things, scared of others, and you don't have time to share this with someone else. You actually don't want to share any of this with someone else. No one knows you but you. No one knows you but you. You're the only person who knows you. You put on a front for everybody, even your best friend, even the Hamim. They think they know you, and they may take pride in knowing you, but they don't really know you. No one does. No one does, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you, if you had some degree of self-awareness. If you didn't have a degree of self-awareness, then even you don't know you. And you'll find out. Like you'll be introduced to you on the day of judgment, and that's a really bad time to be introduced to yourself. Make sure that you get to know yourself well before that, and you know yourself well, so that nothing's a surprise. Now, people who do have a little bit of self-awareness, that day they know, and they don't want a close friend sitting there. Anyone who, if they're going into an exam that they haven't prepared for, don't want to talk to people. Ever felt that way? Huh? Ever felt that way before? Going to an exam and you're not prepared, you don't want to see any of your friends on your way in. And when you're done the exam, you don't wait for anybody either. You just run out because I don't want to talk about this. Why? Well, because you knew going in that you weren't ready, and you knew walking out that you didn't do well. You don't want to have this discussion with people. You don't want them to know how badly you did. You don't want to hear some of the answers that they put down that you should have put down, but you didn't, and it's just a crappy moment. So people we do this all the time. Like if you write difficult exams, and you experience a mini example of what happens that day. وَلَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا. No one's talking to anyone because you're walking there like, I am not prepared for this. Not nearly as much as I should have been. Not everyone's like that, by the way. This is the taghlib. These verses, here at taghlib in the Quran, meaning they talk about the majority of people. And sometimes they're talking about the kafirin, those who were not prepared specifically. Because those who are prepared may be different, may come yawm al-qiyamah. And they're quite, الْأَخِلَّاءُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ إِلَّا الْمُتَّقِينَ. Best friends on the day of judgment are enemies, except the muttaqeen, except those who are pious with one another, except those who worshipped Allah together, who are mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands together, and they're not enemies that day. And they won't be, they'll support one another. If you go to any scholar, honestly, any scholar, at least where I lived, if you all of Sham, and I'm not aware of any exception to this rule, regardless of what their background is or what their what their flavor of Islamic thought may be. They'll all, when you're done sitting down learning from them a matan or studying a book or taking a sanad or whatever, at the end, you will take from them a ahd. And this ahd is just, it's a very simple ahd, it's a covenant. And it's just, لا يغادر أحدنا يوم القيامة دون صاحبه. That on the Day of Judgment, neither of us move without the other one being asked about. That if you're standing there Yawm al-Qiyamah ready to enter Jannah, that you don't jump in. Wait for a second, please. Ask, where is Fulan? Is he doing well? Did he make it? Did he go ahead? Is he coming behind? Where is he? He's not doing well, so you make maybe a little bit of an argument. Well, if you're doing well and you're making your way to the gates of paradise, maybe make an argument for me. Wallahi, I take this ahad with over 50 shuyukh. People, or a million, I hope inshallah to benefit from this one day. Maybe one of them remembers. Maybe, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them the ability to remember us on a day when وَلَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا, on a day where the intimate friend does not ask about his intimate friend. But others will have that luxury. They're close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so they can, شَفَاعَةُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ وَشَفَاعَةُ الشُّهَدَاءِ. What is that? How does a shaheed perform a shafa'ah? If لَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا. No, there's a shafa'ah for the shaheed because he is of status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He stands there and he argues, Ya Rabb, I want my fulan from my family, fulan from my family. Sometimes you'll get it. That intercession sometimes works, and sometimes it doesn't. But at least they tried. And at least they give it a shot. And sometimes your intercession will be accepted. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, I know that which you do not. Or the person, kind of mushrikan or whatever, and they don't make it. But وَلَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا. This is what happens on the Day of Judgment for those who were not prepared. No one's asking about them, and they're not asking about anyone either. All right, let's recite this image of someone who was not prepared, who thought it was far down, eluded themselves that accountability was way down the line. They didn't have to prepare for it. And then they watched the universe melt. They watched the mountains turn into dust. And they got so scared that they couldn't ask about their own friends, and their friends didn't ask about them. This snapshot continues with a few verses, so we'll recite them together, inshallah. يُبَصَّرُونَهُمْ يَوَدُّ الْمُجْرِمُ لَوْ يَفْتَدِي مِنْ عَذَابِ يَوْمِئِذٍ بِبَنِيهِ. So this is one of two places in the Quran where the word يَوْمَئِذٍ is not with a fatha on the mim. So look at it again. It's يَوْمِئِذٍ. All right? It's one of two places in the Quran that are in Surat Hud. مِنْ عَذَابِ يَوْمِئِذٍ بِبَنِيهِ. So one of two in Qira'at Hafs and Asim at least. I think there's maybe other spots in other qira'at, and it's all based on obviously i'rab and where it is in the sentence. But here is min adhabi yawmi'idhin, not yawma'idhin. So just be careful when you're reciting it. وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَأَخِيهِ وَفَصِيلَتِهِ الَّتِي تُؤْوِيهِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ يُنْجِيهِ كَلَّا إِنَّهَا لَظَى نَزَّاعَةً لِلشَّوَى تدعو من أدبر وتولى وجمع فأوعى. So I don't think I'm going to get any more beyond that one, so I'll just stop with that inshallah ta'ala, just because I don't think we'll get any more. So he says يُبَصَّرُونَهُمْ. So this is from the root of basar, which is to see. يُبَصَّر means someone is made to see something. Yubassar, it means you're being made to see something. Yubassarunahum, they are made to see one another. So when he said, وَلَا يَسْأَلُ حَمِيمٌ حَمِيمًا, when he said an intimate friend will not ask about his intimate friend. They won't have the mental capacity or the bandwidth to care for each other on that day because of how difficult it is, specifically if they are not prepared for that and they did not worked hard for it and they did not show sabran jamila as the verses explain and they did not see it qariba, then they don't have the bandwidth to ask about their friends. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes sure that they see one another. This happens all the time. You know about this. You know when there's someone that you haven't talked to for a long time, you don't want to talk to, and you see them, and they see you, but you both act like you didn't see each other. And then if you're forced to run into one another, you act like, oh, I just noticed you didn't. Kazzab inta huwa kazzab. You're both lying. You saw each other way before at the beginning, where you didn't want to actually involve. So Yawm al-Qiyamah, the same thing. Yubassarunahum. They are made, specifically, imagine the amount of people, colossal amount of human beings Yawm al-Qiyamah, but the hamim, the people who are close to each other, are made to see one another, and they still won't ask. Just so it's not, we didn't ask about him because he forgot about him. No, yubassarunahum. You are made to see them. You see them well. You see your parents, and you see your children, and you see your spouse, and you see your friends, and you see the people you knew. On the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensures that you see them and they see you. Now, whether you ask about them because you're doing well or you don't, because when we recited in Surat al-Haqqa, the person who does well, he actually talks to people, right? فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمْ اقْرَؤُوا كِتَابِيَ. He calls upon people, come to me, come read my book. And then he explains things. The guy who gets it in the wrong hand doesn't do that. يَا لَيْتَنِي لَمْ أُوتَ كِتَابِيَ وَلَمْ أَدْرِ مَا حِسَابِيَ. He speaks to himself. He doesn't go public about it because it's embarrassing and he's ashamed and he's upset that it's in the wrong hand. But the mu'min, no, he'll speak to others. That's why we know that there's another dimension to this where you will actually be interested in engaging with people. Same thing, after an exam, if you do really well, you don't mind chatting with people. It's not that difficult. Not that different, honestly, than how life is. يُبَصَّرُونَهُم. They're made to see one another. يَوَدُّ الْمُجْرِمُ. The criminal on that day. And I talked to you about this in Surah Al-Qalam in some degree of depth. The word mujrim in the Quran is referring to the one who broke the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We use the word mujrim in a legal capacity today. And we're talking about someone who broke the law. And it's very good usage and it's correct. In the Quran, however, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about the mujrim, the criminal, he's not talking about someone who broke a random law, ran a red light, even though that could be seen as an extension of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in you accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's law, that when you give your word, you honor it, and you're living in a country where you've accepted this as being the public custom, and you broke it. So in extension, you've kind of broken Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law, but we get what I mean here. When he talks about mujrim, he's not talking about legality, he's talking about his law subhanahu wa ta'ala. He put laws as well. Laws for what you can and cannot do, right? يَوَدُّ الْمُجْرِمُ. So the one who broke all these laws, and he's just to explain that, he's not talking about all people Yawm al-Qiyamah here. He's talking about the mujrim. There's a lot of people who aren't going to be mujrimin Yawm al-Qiyamah. يَوَدُّ الْمُجْرِمُ لَوْ يَفْتَدِي مِنْ عَذَابِ يَوْمِئِذٍ بِبَنِيهِ. The person who broke the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day will wish that he was capable of redeeming himself or ransoming himself. Al-fidya is a ransom. It's also a way to pay something off. It's a kafara, it's an expiation as well. So it's used in different contexts and different meanings in different contexts, whether we're talking about fiqh or talking about something different. Here, it's a ransom, meaning the person yawad, they wish, they hope, they would be very happy if they were capable of ransoming or paying off the ransom of themselves, redeeming themselves, removing themselves of the punishment of that day by giving up their children, bibani. وَصَاحِبَتِهِ, and his wife, وَأَخِيهِ, and his brother, وَفَصِيلَتِهِ الَّتِي تُؤْوِيهِ, and the tribe or the community, or fasila is, qabila is tribe, right? Fasila is a bigger word. There's more to that word in terms of what it means. Fasila is the people who were offered you your social network, really. Is the social network that you had. That's what the fasila is. The group that you were with all the time. Well, and that's why he explains it. Allati tu'wi. The group of people, the social network that took him in, that he belonged to, the group that he belonged to. وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا, and everyone on the planet, everyone who ever lived. ثُمَّ يُنْجِيهِ, in order for him to save himself. When you read this verse, these verses, what you have to ask is the following. Someone who stands there Yawm al-Qiyamah and then says to God, says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I would like to offer as a ransom for myself, as a way to expiate myself or remove myself or redeem myself from this punishment that I'm seeing coming my way that I am deserving of. I am willing to offer my children, take them and burn them, take my wife, take my brother, take the people who in life took me in and took care of me. And if that's not enough, you can burn all of humanity. Just let me, just not me. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what did that person see? What is it? Like if you're standing and looking at that person's face as he says this to Allah, what's reflecting in their pupils? Like what are you seeing in their eyes? What is it that what did they see? To make them say, Ya Rab, here, burn my kids. Burn them all. Not enough? Take my wife, take my brother. These are the people that you loved, you spent your life protecting and caring for. Not enough? Take all of my friends, all of my network, everyone who took care of me in my life. Not enough? Ya Rab, everyone here. Burn them all. All of them, just not me. I can't imagine exactly. You just think, what is reflecting in the eyes of that person? What's the reflection in their eyes? What are they seeing? What horrors have they witnessed that allowed them to say something like that? And the answer is kalla. No. That's not how this works. Innaha lava, indeed, it's a raging flame. That's what lava means. Lava nar is the heat of the flame of the fire. It's a flaming. Nazza'atan lishawa, it tears off the front part of the scalp of the forehead. Naza' is something that is torn off. Shawa is that front part of yourself. How do you present yourself? You present yourself with your face, with your head. That's how you present yourself. So it goes after that piece. It tears it off first. Tad'u, it's calling this lava, this flame, this fire that is a raging flame that tears off the front part of the foreheads. Tad'u, it's calling upon man adbara wa tawalla wa jama'a wa fa'aw'a. It calls upon the one that turned their backs, wa tawalla, and walked in the opposite direction. See, he's Allah Dil Ma'arij. He's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has the multiple, infinite ways to ascend to him subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's an infinite number of ways for you to please him. He's not hard to please. Some people are hard to please. Nothing's ever enough. Not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not hard to please. Just a couple of basics, just a few things that Tawheed, just get the 5, get the Ramadan, and then find something, find a niche, find a behavior, something that you can do well. What are you good at? What do you have excess of? What are you good at? Just do that, and that'll be your path of ascension to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He'll take it, whatever it may be. But this person turned their backs, and they walked in the opposite direction of that ascension. وَجَمَعَ, and they gathered all of the wealth that they could gather. فَأَوْعَى, and they hid it all for themselves. He is drawing for you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, a picture of someone who's extremely self-centered, very selfish, very self-focused, cares about only that which they own, only that which they can accumulate, only that which they can keep for themselves, depending on it, depending on the relief that it offers them, the illusion of safety and security that this container of money, that this bank account number offers them, when really none of it is correct. So on the Day of Judgment, this fire, that the one who saw it was willing to offer up everything they loved, and then everything that ever existed to be burnt in it, but just in order yunji, that they will be saved. That fire, that raging fire that goes for the front part of the forehead, calls upon everyone who turned their backs. Kull man adbar, all those who turned their backs, all those who walked in the opposite, tawalla, kept on going. وَجَمَعَ فَأَوْعَى, and gathered and accumulated and didn't pay back. See, فَأَوْعَى is just pointing out that there was no haqq for anyone else in it. They didn't use it the way. You can do jam'a, because jam'a is not haram. Like, okay, you're gathering some wealth, you're working hard, you're gathering some wealth. It's not haram to do that. فَأَوْعَى means you held it back. There was no zakah being paid, there was no sadaqah, there was no. Yeah. It calls upon them. And they have to respond. They respond whether they like it or not. The concept, why is this here? Why is this in Surat al-Ma'arij right before yani the right. So I'll end with that inshallah. So the next week and the week after will be Ramadan prep sessions. And the next week, Saturday and Sunday, so Friday will be a prep session in fiqh in Arabic, and then Saturday and Sunday will be prep sessions in English, fiqh. The first day, Saturday, and then Sunday will be talking about some challenges. Dr. Khukar, inshallah, will be sharing a panel with me. And then the week after, Friday will be a spiritual prep in Arabic, and then Saturday, Sunday will also be spiritual preps for Ramadan in Arabic and English, inshallah, as well. Then this halaqah will come back and continue in the explanation of Surat al-Ma'arij somewhere in mid-April. So after Ramadan, a few weeks after Ramadan, we'll bring it back, inshallah ta'ala. I hope this was a benefit to you. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammad.